affirmation today. Our message affirmation is I am a spiritual being, and we absolutely are. So many times in conversation, and I'm probably not the only one who's heard this, when the subject of faith or religion comes up, a thing that I hear more often than not these days is people say, well, I'm not really religious, but I'm spiritual. And I sometimes have a hard time grasping exactly what that means. And some people go even further when they say, well, I don't know exactly what's there, but I'm sure there's something there, some higher power. And that kind of reminds me of, that time of the day when you're going to maybe sit down and watch television. You think you want to eat something, and you don't really know what you want, but you go rummaging through the refrigerator and the cupboards, and in the end, you usually walk away with nothing because nothing really appealed to you. And I kind of liken these people to that same situation. They're kind of walking away with nothing because if you just sort of, wander through life thinking, well, there's something, but I don't know what it is, and, you don't really devote yourself to anything specifically, well then, of course, you're walking away with nothing. So when we read today's affirmation, I am a spiritual being, you're going to take away a lot more than that because it's a very meaningful statement. Because we're all human beings and we all live, exist, and go through the human experience. And in this day-to-day human experience, most of us are pretty purpose-driven. We get up in the morning and we have some sort of purpose, something that we're doing that day or some bigger life thing of, what you're doing, your job or your role in life. I'm not sure, some of you here may recall several years ago when we were still meeting at the church there on Freeman, we had a guest speaker, and his topic was about a purpose-filled life. And I remember sitting there struggling because I thought, well, that's such a big question. A lot of times if somebody says, what's your purpose in life? We want to sit back and think that it's some big earth-shattering thing. But I remember walking away feeling really disappointed because I had thought that through this, I was going to find, my big purpose in life, and the clouds were going to spread and, bright lights were going to come down and it was all going to become so clear, and that didn't happen. So that was kind of a disappointment. The other day, I was reading one of the New Thought publications that I enjoy, and the subject of this article was about the purpose of life. And as I read this, it became so clear to me. Of course, now I'm a much more advanced New Thought student than I was all those years ago when we did this workshop. But in this article, what he was talking about was so obvious and clear, and that is that our purpose in life is to be a spiritual being. So, of course, as human beings, we all have our experiences. We're raising children, we're teachers, doctors, lawyers, business people, electricians, plumbers. Everybody has their thing in life that you're walking through and you're doing, and it's important that we realize that that is something that we're doing here, but that's not our main purpose in life. Our main purpose in life is to be perfect spiritual beings. Because in all these things that we've talked about, one day your children grow up, or you might change jobs, you retire. Does your purpose in life end? No, of course not. You don't, raise your children and say, okay, where's the rocking chair? I'll just wait for the, the big white to come. No. We do have a purpose, and we have a purpose. We constantly have a purpose. So we were created by God in the image of God to be spiritual beings. And as spiritual beings, we are to express the attributes of God, such as love, life, peace, joy, success, harmony, freedom, prosperity, wholeness, fulfillment, intelligence, enthusiasm, security, power, all these wonderful myriad of things. We know that God is the source of our supply, and God is the source of all these attributes. And this is what we are as spiritual beings. We are all these wonderful things. Somebody that I was mentioning this to when I talked about the purpose, you have your daily job, your life, and, you're raising children, or you're taking care of the home, or you're, the electrician, the plumber, whatever. And then for me to come behind it and say, but your main purpose is a spiritual being. And so some people mentioned that they had a challenge with, how do I do both? And I likened it to a boat. A boat, when the architect and the designer sit down, their main purpose is that it floats. But of course, that's not the main purpose of a boat. It is important that it floats, but it's to transport people or goods, or to save people, or, to provide security. So when you get to this point and you're thinking of the the challenge of doing both of these things, of being a spiritual being and yet still being in your daily role. Just remember a boat. A boat has those purposes. So it floats, but it has a higher purpose. So all of us, we have our human plane that we're living in. We're being, like I say, we're raising the children. We're the doctor, the lawyer, the electrician, the plumber, whatever. But our higher goal is to be a spiritual being, to express these attributes of God, and yes, to do this life of great happiness, health, and prosperity. I was reading earlier this week, too, in the book of Luke, which is very relevant, wherein Luke was recounting how, and I think we're all familiar with the New Testament, how as Christ began going around and preaching, there were all these naysayers. A lot of the Pharisees and the leaders would criticize him. In one instance, they talk about how Christ and his disciples, they were feasting and they were having ample food and wine. And the naysayers were saying, well, look at John the Baptist. All of his disciples, they're always fasting and praying. And even the Pharisees, their followers, they're fasting and they're praying. And Christ's response was, does a happy man need to stop and pray? Does a happy man need to stop and feast? So if everything is going good for you, if everything is fine, like we like to promote ourselves as New Thought students, we don't have that need to stop and fast and be challenged all the time in these things we do, because we know that we are entitled to these lives of great health, great happiness, and great prosperity. So as you go throughout the week, ask yourself this question. Our question this week is, in what ways can I best demonstrate my spiritual nature? We can all relate to this. We're all going to be at a point where we're going to be in a circumstance or a situation, and we're asking ourselves, how am I being my very best spiritual nature? How am I displaying my very best spiritual nature? As I was going through this week and preparing, I had thought to myself, how we talk about being a good demonstration. How about we demonstrate ourselves through our New Thought faith and beliefs, and we become a good example. And so I liken this the reverse way. So if you have a friend or a neighbor who's always miserable and sick and unhappy, and they come and say, oh, come to church with me, I think a lot of us are going to say, real, I think I'll hold off on that. So we can be the absolute reverse. We can be perfectly happy and healthy and prosperous in all that we do, and by this example show other people that living this life as a New Thought student and being a spiritual being, we can get all these wonderful things. So the good news is that we all have true purpose in life as a spiritual being, and through our spirituality we can express the attributes of God, such as love, life, peace, joy, success, harmony, freedom, prosperity, wholeness, fulfillment, intelligence, enthusiasm, security, and power. But every day in every way, we can express these attributes because we are spiritual beings. So in every way, being an example of these attributes, sharing these attributes, and inspiring spirituality in others. When we demonstrate ourselves as beings who are happy and healthy and prosperous, even in the most challenging circumstance or situation, if we display our best self, then we're helping to spread that spirituality to others, so that we get to this place where we are surrounded by this harmony and peace all the time. So the good news is that we all have true purpose. We are all spiritual beings. So again, as you go through the week, ask yourself, in what ways can I best demonstrate my spiritual nature? And if you sit back and ask this, things will come to you, whether it's smiling at the neighbor who you usually frown at, or being a little kinder to your coworkers or your family or your friends or your in-laws. These are all little ways that we can best demonstrate our spiritual nature, because we are all spiritual beings.